If we do not take the early post-war models into account, Toyota almost never copied anyone, neither in design nor in the overall concept of its cars. By the mid-1990s, Toyota had already become a reference point for many manufacturers. Yet around that same time, Toyota introduced the Mega Cruiser, an SUV that looks very similar to the American Hummer. What was it? And why did Toyota take this step? And was it really a copy at all? After Japan's surrender in World War II, the country came under Allied occupation. Formally, it was an international administration. But in practice, control was held by the United States, with Douglas MacArthur serving as the head of the occupation authority. Under his leadership, Japan underwent demilitarization. Its economy was restructured towards civilian needs, and the new constitution was adopted. It included the well-known Article 9, under which Japan renounced war as a tool of state policy. With the beginning of the Cold War, however, the situation in the region quickly became more complicated. In 1949, Mao Zedong proclaimed the establishment of the People's Republic of China, bringing the Civil War to an end with a communist victory. A year later, the Korean War began, which also risked ending in a similar outcome. In these conditions, the United States began to reconsider its policy toward Japan. From a defeated enemy, the country gradually became a key ally in the region. Strict demilitarization was scaled back, the economy was actively restored, and security agreements were signed between the two countries. With this new status, Japan became one of the major buyers of American military equipment, including fighter aircraft and missile systems. At the same time, it continued to develop its own tanks, ships, and other types of military hardware. It would have been logical to assume that Japan would also simply purchase military utility vehicles such as the Humvee from the United States. But that did not happen. The Humvee, which had proven itself during the Gulf War, was indeed a capable vehicle. However, it was not ideally suited to Japanese conditions. Unlike the Middle East, Japan has narrow roads, dense urban environments, and mountainous terrain. In such conditions, a large American vehicle would be difficult to maneuver, especially within populated areas. Japan also sought to maintain a degree of independence in military procurement and avoid becoming fully dependent on external suppliers. At the same time, it aimed to develop its own defense industry, recognizing that relying entirely on imports would eventually lead to its decline. As a result, the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force tasked Toyota with developing a universal military off-road vehicle, using the Humvee as the primary reference point. The first production mega cruisers appeared in 1995, and, like their overseas counterpart, this vehicle immediately stood out due to its substantial size. Inside, it could accommodate 6 people, 2 in the front and 4 in the rear, while behind them was a cargo area measuring 1,355 by 2,050 millimeters, capable of carrying up to 600 kilograms of load or housing specialized equipment. At the same time, the Mega Cruiser was slightly larger than the Humvee, and the Toyota was also heavier, which at first glance seemed unusual, considering that one of the key requirements was maneuverability on Japan's narrow roads and in dense urban environments. The answer lay in its design. The Mega Cruiser was equipped with rear-wheel steering, meaning the rear wheels turned along with the front ones, significantly improving maneuverability despite its size. As a result, even with a wheelbase of nearly 3.5 meters, the four-wheel steering system allowed for a turning radius of just 5.6 meters. For comparison, a Toyota Camry of that period had a larger turning circle, while the Humvee's was closer to 8 meters. In all other aspects, the Mega Cruiser followed the logic of military vehicles, combining a simple layout with a high margin of durability. At its core was a robust steel frame housing the engine and drivetrain components, while all 4 wheels were independently suspended using double wishbones with torsion bars as the spring elements. To increase ground clearance, the engineers used portal axles, with the braking components mounted on the half shafts rather than inside the wheel hubs, allowing the clearance to reach 420 millimeters, about 13 millimeters more than the Humvee with a similar axle design. Off-road capability was further enhanced by center and axle differential locks of the torsion type, along with a central tire inflation system, making the vehicle highly adaptable in difficult terrain. Under the plastic hood, the Toyota Mega Cruiser was fitted with a 4.1-liter turbo diesel, producing 153 horsepower. The engine was borrowed from the Toyota Coaster Bus and offered a combination of high reliability and reasonable efficiency. Power was delivered to all four wheels through a 4-speed automatic transmission, and the vehicle came standard with all-wheel drive and triple differential locking. Large-scale deliveries to the military never followed, and this can largely be explained by the specifics of both the Japan Self-Defense Forces and the Mega Cruiser itself. The Japanese military is relatively compact and does not require a large fleet of heavy off-road vehicles, as it does not conduct expeditionary operations and was not designed for that type of deployment. As a result, the Mega Cruiser was delivered in limited numbers and used mainly in specialized roles, such as in communications units, as a light towing vehicle, or as a base platform for various equipment and weapon systems. For many tasks, however, the vehicle proved excessive in both size and capability, and in most cases those roles were effectively handled by more compact off-road vehicles or dedicated equipment. Toyota did not attempt to export the Mega Cruiser, and such plans were likely never seriously considered. This was influenced by both objective factors and informal constraints. On the one hand, the military vehicle market is highly closed and closely tied to politics, and it is unlikely that the United States would have welcomed a direct competitor to the Humvee in international contracts. On the other hand, the Humvee itself was a more universal platform, suited to a wide range of tasks and conditions, and relatively simple to operate and maintain. Against that background, the Mega Cruiser, with its more complex design, including four-wheel steering, appeared to be a less universal solution. In total, around 3,000 vehicles were produced for military use, which is a modest figure by the standards of military equipment, and for Toyota, effectively a statistical margin. For comparison, more than 280,000 Humvees were produced in military form alone, not including civilian versions. Following the Gulf War, the Humvee received significant attention from the press and became a recognizable public phenomenon. Interest in the vehicle quickly moved beyond the military, leading to discussions about a civilian version, with one of its most prominent advocates being Arnold Schwarzenegger, who played a key role in its development. Toyota also introduced a civilian version of the Mega Cruiser, and, as in the American case, it was a byproduct of the military program. However, the logic behind it was different. The Mega Cruiser had no major military events or public exposure that could generate broader interest. In addition, the project itself was unprofitable for Toyota. A production run of roughly 3,000 units did not cover development costs, and the civilian version helped at least partially offset those losses, since the platform and major components were already in place. At the same time, Toyota had a clear example of a successful transition of a military vehicle into the civilian market, and ignoring that precedent would have made little sense. The civilian version of the Mega Cruiser was introduced in January 1996. Unlike the American counterpart, which came in several body styles, Toyota offered a single configuration, a 4-door, 6-seat wagon. Compared to the military version, the civilian Mega Cruiser had a fully enclosed metal body, a revised front end, and a basic set of comfort features, including an audio system and air conditioning. Even so, the price was high, 9.62 million yen. For comparison, the flagship Toyota Century cost around 11 million yen at the time. And price was only one of the issues. Japan also applied higher taxes to large vehicles with bigger engines, reflecting dense cities and narrow roads. Buyers at this level could usually absorb those costs, so taxes were not the main barrier. The real problem was positioning. The vehicle was expensive, offered limited comfort, and its size made everyday use impractical. Toyota therefore focused on corporate customers, municipal services, fire departments, forestry agencies, and rescue units, those who needed a large and reliable off-road vehicle without the constraints of a purely military platform. That strategy did not work. For most tasks, the Mega Cruiser was excessive, too large and too complex, while the Toyota Land Cruiser 70 covered the same needs at lower cost and with greater simplicity. Export might seem like a logical step, especially without the restrictions applied to military equipment. Yet, Toyota did not pursue it for several reasons. By that point, the Hummer had already secured its niche and strong recognition, making direct competition difficult. High production costs added risk, and entering foreign markets would have required additional investment in certification, crash testing, and environmental compliance, all with uncertain returns. Toyota chose not to export the mega cruiser. Only 133 civilian units were built, with just 12 in left-hand drive. Most likely, these cars left Japan through private purchases by enthusiasts. In 2023, one of those left-hand drive mega cruisers was imported into the United States and sold at auction for $144,000, despite having around 114,000 kilometers on the odometer. In the end, the mega cruiser project turned out to be unprofitable for Toyota. It was never intended to be a commercial product in the first place. It was a project of state importance, where Toyota was solving a task that had more to do with cooperation with the government than with the market. In that sense, the mega cruiser fully served its purpose.